Hello and welcome. You're watching the Tuesday edition of This Is Exclusive with me, Shavin Sen. 1,708 containers on a Singapore-based vessel. Chemicals that are used in making explosives now found. Multiple explosions have been reported, and this vessel had come from Colombo headed towards Nhava Sheva port. Tonight on This Is Exclusive, we peel out each layers coming in on this big story. Was there a national security concern? All this and much more on this edition of This Is Exclusive. But up first, let me take you through the headlines we're tracking at this hour. Sources say the Singapore cargo vessel had 157 containers carrying hazardous material. Coast Guard confirms material could be a possible reason for explosion. International Centre for Ocean Information Service issues alert for the coast of Kerala due to potential oil spill and debris from the ship. As Axiom 4 crew prepares for liftoff, Chief of Air Staff biggest story, but it is now turning out to be one of the biggest national security concern. We're talking about the Singapore vessel that caught fire on 9th of June around 9:30 in the morning. But even now, as we speak, the fire is yet to be doused. In fact, I'm going to start with the latest visuals that have been captured from the Dornier aircraft of the Indian Coast Guard. These are the latest visuals of the firefighting operations, which show that only 40% of the fire has been doused after over 24 hours. Now, this is the latest visual that we have just got. I'm going to play out the entire sequence of what has been caught by the Dornier aircraft. In fact, that will just give you, I'll just give you a sneak peek into how the operations are being carried out and why it is turning out to be the biggest challenge. I'm also going to tell you in details as to what they have found so far. Take a look. Well, now let me tell you what we know so far. The Indian Coast Guard is now still continuing with the fire and the attempt to bring the inferno under control. As we speak, visible flames may have reduced and thick smoke continues to emanate, is what the Indian Coast Guard has informed us. In fact, what you see right now on your screen, at least the middle portion of the ship as well as the rear end of the ship, explosions can still be heard, and that is the reason why this entire process is turning out to be far more challenging. Now, I'll tell you why it has taken so much time. That is because what you see, these containers, over 1,700 containers that have basically come in. Now, each of these containers contain hazardous substances. About 157 such hazardous substances are present. That is the latest information that we have got from multiple authorities. Let's take you through some of the details now coming in with regards to the firefighting operation. The Indian Coast Guard has confirmed that the operation is far from over. In fact, they're pegging this at just 40% of the work has been completed so far. They have also included 2 more vessels to ensure that the firefighting process still continues. Now, that gives you a sense that now it's almost going to be 36 hours and the firefighting operation still continues. Gives you a sense of what's really happening right now on the ground. Now, the fire was reported off the coast of Bepur in Kerala, and this vessel, which is based out of Singapore, had moved out of Colombo port and was headed towards the Navasheva port, and off the coast of Kerala is where this fire was first reported. Now, what I'm going to essentially do, ladies and gentlemen, which is, of course, the biggest story of the day, is this very cargo, that ship that had an explosion on board yesterday off the Kerala coast. The incident occurred around 9:30 in the morning on 9th of June when an underdeck explosion was reported by the Maritime Operations Centre in Mumbai and related to their Kochi counterparts. Soon after, you've had the Indian Coast Guard as well as the Indian Navy diverting multiple of their ships. In fact, multiple vessels and the destroyer INS Surat, which was scheduled to dock in Kochi to render emergency assistance. But the question to ask is, was the ship carrying banned substance? And if yes, where was it headed to and who is the real owner of this particular ship? First, take a look at the detailed report and then we're going to break it down as to what we know in terms of the content of each of these containers.
A devastating fire has completely gutted a cargo vessel off the coast of Kerala. Thick black plumes of smoke can be seen billowing from the vessel as flames continue to rage. The Indian Coast Guard has mobilized 3 ships, working relentlessly to extinguish the blaze. The dramatic action is unfolding in the Arabian Sea off the Bepur coast of Kerala. There were 22 crew members on board at the time of the fire. Of them, 18 are reported to have jumped into the sea to escape the flames. Rescue teams have managed to locate them and are working to bring them to safety. 4 remain missing. The Indian Navy responded quickly by diverting the warship INS Surat to the site of the fire. The Singapore-flagged cargo vessel, which is en route to Mumbai from Colombo, Sri Lanka, suffered an internal container explosion yesterday, leading to a massive fire on board. The ship manifest of the Singapore-flagged vessel, which exploded off the coast of Kerala, has been accessed by Republic. The manifest reveals the container ship was carrying highly inflammable and hazardous substances. The cargo on board is being carefully assessed to understand the potential risks involved in the firefighting operations. The ICG is in constant coordination with the Directorate General of Shipping State Administration and the vessel owners to devise a comprehensive response plan.
There were multiple explosions on the vessel, which led to abandoning of the vessel by the crew. There were 22 crew, 18 have been rescued, 4 are still missing. And since then, there has been a lookout operation for the crew, for the 4 missing crew, that is our priority 1. Priority 2 is addressing the fire on board so that once we extinguish the fire, we'll be able to tow the ship to safety. As of now, the fire is still on. We have got some considerable achievements in lowering the intensity of the fire, and we hope so that since it is a long drawn process, it's a chemical fire on board, we are trying our level best to extinguish it clearly.
ICG ships Samudra Prahari and Sachet are conducting firefighting operations, while the ICG ship Samarth, along with salvors from Kochi, has been deployed to assist in the efforts. The priority remains to save the lives of the crew, contain the fire, and prevent environmental hazards.
Well, in fact, the Republic has also accessed a new set of visuals of the Singapore cargo vessel, which has been battling a massive blaze in the aftermath of an explosion. These visuals were captured in the night. These are visuals that no other network has, and we're just going to place each of these images so that you understand the magnitude of the fire that the Indian Coast Guard and the Navy is dealing with right now. And that takes us to the other big question as to what were they really carrying. Because this is just not any other random fire that broke out in a vessel, but we are looking at multiple explosions that have taken place right from the time this ship had first reported Mayday. And thereafter, what we are given to understand is that each of the areas from where the explosions have been reported, starting with the underdeck area where the first, what we are given to understand, the first blast actually took place, and thereafter it did actually start spreading. Now this ship left from Colombo and it was off the coast of Baipur in Kerala around 9:30 in the morning when the Maritime Coordination Agency first received the report that the ship had caught fire. And 4 of the crew members were actually behind this entire rescue operation till the time the Indian Coast Guard and the Indian Navy actually came in. 18 of them have already been rescued. Rest of them, at least 4 of them, are still missing. Now that's a confirmation that came in from the Coast Guard a short while back that they are still missing right now. What are the 2 major causes of concern? One, a possible oil spill in that particular area, and that is the reason why private agencies are also being roped in. The second important concern is that how long perhaps it's going to take before they are able to douse the fire completely, because right now only 40% of the firefighting operation has been completed. Well, in fact, just a short while back, the Coast Guard confirmed to Republic that 18 crew members have been rescued, 4 are still missing. These are the latest visuals of the rescued crew members who are involved in the firefighting operations arriving at the Mangalore Port Authority. In fact, they have now been taken to the Mangalore Port Authority. They were brought in the INS Surat, that's Indian Navy's destroyer that was pressed into action for ensuring that the crew members are basically taken out. These are the images coming in of the crew members who were taken in. I'm also going to give you a breakdown of the nationality of each of their crew members. In fact, this is a confirmation now coming in from the Navy where they have told us with regards to those who have been rescued so far. Of the 22, 18 have already been rescued, and we are being told this includes Myanmaris, Taiwanese, as well as Chinese nationals who have been rescued and have now been taken to the Bangalore Port Authority. What I'm also going to do right now, ladies and gentlemen, help you understand what has happened over the last few hours. 36 hours and the fire still continues. The firefighting operation still continues. That's because of the 1,700 containers that are present in this particular ship. Several of them contain extremely hazardous substances. In fact, this also includes chemicals that are essentially used in making explosives. TNT has also been reported. Now, let me just take you through the timeline of it. What is it that we know so far? On 9th of June, around 9:20 in the morning, the vessel caught fire. Immediately thereafter, 4 vessels were sent to the spot. In fact, these 4 happen to be one of the premier vessels of the Indian Coast Guard. Around 12:40 in the afternoon, the fire started spreading to the other containers. In fact, it started from here, what you see, the midsection of the ship, and from the underdeck area where the explosions took place, and thereafter it started spreading towards the rear end. Now, this part that you see, that the forward bay area of the ship still remains safe, is what we are being told. Around 2:30 in the afternoon is when the vessel started drifting, and the firefighting operation still continued. This was still about 2:30 in the afternoon. 9 o'clock in the night is when you've had more Dornier aircrafts being sent to the spot, because you're looking at aerial response coming in. 11:23 in the morning, that is today, we are being told that the fire and explosions still continued. And these boats that you see, these are boats of the Indian Navy that were basically being used for the rescue operation to be carried out. 2:50 in the afternoon is when the Indian National Center for the Ocean Information Services, they issued an alert, and this was basically for a possible oil spill that may have actually taken place. 3 o'clock a little after 3 o'clock when the authorities directed appointment of salvor and firefighting expert. These are private organizations that are being roped in, and that is only to ensure that if at all there is an oil spill, it is basically contained. 3:23 in the afternoon, the coastal surveillance was also stepped up. A short while back, I also spoke to the commander of the Indian Coast Guard. In fact, they have basically confirmed that the firefighting operations are also being carried out. Even as we speak, the firefighting operations are still going on. And not just that, they've also confirmed the fact that there are hazardous substances, and that is the reason why this entire process is becoming even more challenging. Well, in fact, these are the latest audio visuals that we have accessed a short while back that continues to show us the current situation on the ground. As you can see, multiple of these vessels have also been brought in, and these multiple vessels are basically targeting the rear end of the ship. In fact, that's where the bulk of the operation is being carried out. Well, in a moment that will be etched in the annals of Indian space exploration forever, Group Captain Shubhangshu Shukla is poised to make history as he prepares to embark on the Axiom Mission 4 to the International Space Station. This extraordinary journey is not just a testament to Shukla's unwavering dedication and unrelenting passion, but also a shining example of India's growing prowess in the space. From the quiet streets of Lucknow to the vast expanse of space, Shukla's story is one of dreams, perseverance, and the unbridled potential of the Indian spirit. In fact, joining us on this broadcast is Zahir Ali. In fact, he's been part of various projects of NASA. He's a former NASA official. Mr. Ali, thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. I want to begin by asking you, you've been part of several of these missions that have been carried out, particularly by the NASA. What makes the Axiom mission so very different? ISRO and NASA coming together and carrying out this exploration just before the Gaganyaan operation to be carried out, the Gaganyaan mission to be carried out. How do you really look at this entire mission, and what does it essentially mean for space exploration?
Axiom 4 is a shining example of how the collaboration between industry and government space programs can work, and particularly international collaboration. So you have two American companies, Axiom and SpaceX, providing the capability to go to a national resource, which is actually an international resource, the International Space Station, populated by an international team, and this crew is wonderfully international. Being a child of Indian immigrants to the U.S. myself, it's with a great deal of pride that we see that Commander Shukla is going to be the pilot for this alongside Commander Whitson. And what your audience may not know is the company itself, Axiom, is now led as CEO by another Indian, Tejpal Bhatia. So it really goes to show what the future is going to look like. The future for space is international. The future for space is collaborations between nations and collaborations between industry and governmental programs to provide the ability to take humanity to the stars and eventually to be present on other worlds. I believe in our lifetime, we're going to see boots on Mars. We're going to see colonies on the moon. And those are going to be international collaborations. And India and the US are natural partners in many, many ways. And this partnership that you're seeing is just another expression of that.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ali, for joining us on this broadcast. Zair Ali, who has also been part of multiple missions of NASA, and talking about joint collaborations, which perhaps is now the way forward. Well, that's all that we could pack in this edition of This Is Exclusive. Coming up, trending with my colleague Rakshita, as she also gets you exclusive conversation with the family members of Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla.